Hello. Well, today is Thanksgiving, and I'm in Tombstone, and so I took a little walk around town because there's no one else there, and so you can maybe see a little bit about the place without interruptions and whatever. So, hope you enjoy. Okay, so it's Thanksgiving morning, about 10 o'clock, 2017. Here we are in Tombstone. As you can see, I'm one of the only people in town, so it's going to be very quiet today. See some of the countryside out here. It's an old west town, it's right in the middle of the desert, so that's what you'd expect to see. Okay, so let's take a walk. Excuse the rough ride. This is just my iPhone. And straight off, you can see the Birdcage Theatre has actually got its doors open. There's a big surprise. Didn't expect them to be open today. Didn't expect anything to be open today. So we'll move over to hereabouts, maybe just here, because this, around the spot here, is where Curly Bill Brochure shot Sheriff Fred White in October 28th, 1880. And again, it's not portrayed in the Tombstone movie the way it's supposed to have happened, because in the Tombstone movie you see Curly Bill coming out of an opium den or high on opium and shooting his guns off in the street. Wyatt Earp comes out and saves the day. But the only problem with that is the opium den right down the other end of town, down there, where I'll show you later. And so that couldn't have been true. What they believe really happened was that there was a bunch of cowboys drunk and causing loads of noise and whatever, nothing else really, but they were supposed to be on a vacant lot next to the Birdcage Theatre. Now that was either this one here, though I have seen pictures of a building on that site. You can just about see the remains on the end of that wall. More than likely down on that lot over there. Now when Wyatt Earp came out to detain or restrain Curly Bill, it was just about here, and from this spot over there the cowboys were evidently taking pot shots at him, so he was always cool under fire, and that was certainly proved on that day. So there's another little bit of history for you. Not quite as in the movie, but there won't be any gunfights in town or anything like that. Anyway, that's where they say it all happened. I have my doubts. One of my doubts is that if Morgan Earp was shot on December the 28th, 1881, and this opened December the 31st, 1881, he could never have been in there. But then other people say different. You see all the shops. Tombstone is largely knick-knack shops. If you want to come and buy a cowboy outfit, this is the place for you. If you want to buy guns or whatever, it isn't. There are no gun shops in town per se. It's ironic really, isn't it? There's Watt and Tarbell Undertakers. That's one of the famous places in town. Supposedly very, very haunted. They do paranormal investigations there daily. And this is Doc Holliday's bar, which was part of the Wat and Table Undertakers at the time. They look as though they're closed at the moment, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if they're open later. I go in there during the day sometimes, very rarely, but I don't go in there at night. It's a bit of a slaughterhouse. A locals bar, I'm not really into local mom and pop bars, I'm afraid. It's one of the reasons I don't drink here, because really that's all there is. So this building on the corner here, this is where the Oriental Saloon stood. This is where Wyatt Earp walked in and kicked the dodgy dealer's arse out. Supposedly a very, very nice saloon in its day. It didn't survive the first fire in 1881, but it was rebuilt after that, and it did survive the 1882 fire, I believe. That is a very interesting place. It's now a shop for ladies' clothes. This here is the Longhorn restaurant. Now, we've got something here. This is really quite a nice restaurant. But the interesting thing for me about this is back in 1881, on December the 28th ish, this was a vacant lot being built, and the guys that shot Virgil Earp were hiding on this lot in the dark, and this is where they ambushed him from. And Virgil Earp fell just out here. He fell just around this area here. This is the Crystal Palace Saloon. Well, the real Crystal Palace stood on this site, I believe. Again, most of these buildings, you have to be careful. They were rebuilt after the two fires in 1881 and 1882. Well, this is not quite up to Piccadilly Circus's Christmas tree, but it's nice to have one. Crystal Palace. And I believe this, yeah, December the 28th, 1881. I was right. So, this is where he fell, out here. Luckily he didn't die, but he lost the use of one of his arms. This here is the site for Vogan's Alley. It was a bowling alley back in the Earp's day. That's why it's called Vogan's Alley. It used to be one of the best burger joints in town, but it closed down and it's never reopened. Well, you may not have heard of Vogan's Alley, but I bet if you've watched the Wyatt Earp movie, you would have heard of John O'Rourke, otherwise known as Johnny Behind the Deuce. Now, he was a professional gambler, and when he was living in Charleston, Arizona, he killed a guy called Henry Schneider, and he was supposed to be self-defense, but the citizens got really head up about this and threatened to lynch O'Rourke. So Constable John McElvey took O'Rourke to Tombstone, chased by the angry mob, and once there he was put into Vogan's Alley for his own safety by Virgil Earp, and some say Doc Holliday, and some say Wyatt Earp. and that's where the famous confrontation that you see in the Wyatt Earp movie outside happens, where Wyatt faces down the crowd. So this is where it happened. So let's go out on the street again. You very rarely see it this quiet. I mean, in the off season it does get very quiet here, but there's always something going on, but it's going to be a very quiet day today. And here, this is where Campbell and Hatch's Billiards used to be. And this is where Morgan Earp got shot on October the 18th, 1882. He was in there playing billiards with his back to the rear door, Fremont Street, and someone shot him through the glass door in the back, shattered his spine. He took some time to die. It was a really terrible scene. But another thing that the movies always portray is that Virgil and Morgan got shot on the same night. In fact, they didn't. They were shot 3 months apart, but that doesn't flow photographically for the movies, so it's always been shown that way. But the truth is not the same as the movies. Now here is the only saloon in town that I really hang out. It's actually quite good. It reminds me, everything reminds me of something, you know. And this reminds me of Ned Kelly's in Hong Kong for some reason or other. That's why I like it. This used to be the Grand Hotel, and in the days before the fire there was an extra story on the top there, and that was where all the rooms were. I think there were 16 rooms, and this is where the Earps and the Clantons and Doc Holliday, they all stayed here, they all drank here. And inside there's the original bar where they all used to belly up. So if you have a drink at that bar, you're in good company. And right next door here, you can see that the arches on the facade match these, which are part of Big Nose Kate's. So the actual Grand Hotel went as far over as that. It was bigger in the day. This here, back in 1881, this used to be an alleyway. There wasn't a building there on that lot. It used to be an alleyway which went through to a livery stable at the back. Heading down. This site here, this is where the Occidental Hotel used to stand. It's one of the prime hotels in Tombstone, very big, bigger than the Grand, I would say. But it never survived the fires, so it was never rebuilt to its former glory. Knick-knack shops, more knick-knack shops, but this here has got some interest. On October, I think it was the 26th, 1881, on the day of the gunfight, famous gunfight on Fremont Street, in a vacant lot next to the OK Corral, to be exact. At this corner here was where the Earps and Doc Holliday assembled. And then from here they made their walk down this sidewalk here. So So they walked down here. They walked down here. And they walked on the sidewalk. They didn't walk out there on the road. And the reason for that, two reasons. One, in those days the road was full of horse crap. But two, on the 26th of October 1881, it had been snowing. And so there was lots of horrible snow on the road. So again, the movies portrayed it not as it happened. The Clantons and the McClarys, they got there through the OK Corral, which we'll pass in a minute. This here is a historic building. This used to be the bank. It's now the visitor centre. So we make our way further down. If you're ever in Tombstone, this Historama is supposed to be very good. Very, very interesting. History, a film of the history of Tombstone, narrated by Vincent Price, closer to the day. And here we have the legendary OK Corral. And you entered the OK Corral via those two gates there. That's where the McClarys and the Clantons went through. And that was an alleyway with stables for horses on each side. A bit like a gas station for horses. And that led all the way through to Fremont Street. Whereas, nowadays, the actual gunfight that the OK Corral shows take place over there in a lot. I will rejoin you there on Fremont Street. Hello again. Right, we're now on Fremont Street, and this is the City Hall undergoing refurbishment. There is the Marshal's office, and we pan in, and the interesting thing about this is where the OK Corral actually was. This is where the other end of that alleyway that I said came out, and this is not where the gunfight happened. No matter what people might say. Pardon me. If we walk down here, we'll see where it actually did happen. Here's a reconstruction of flies. Excuse me, I'm walking on stones. Just checking my zoom, sorry about that. Now, here's the site of the OK. This is a sign saying the OK Corral, pardon my mistake. And this says the site of the OK Corral gun battle. Well, that is correct. This is the site of the OK Corral gun battle, but it wasn't the OK Corral. This was a vacant lot in those days, next to Fly's photographic studio, in between that and some other building which has been recreated on that corner there, which is 3rd. And in those days this wall didn't exist, and this is where the gunfight took place, on the partly on the other side of that wall and partly on the street out here. This is where people died, and this notice is actually pretty truthful. Said a few feet from where indicated here, Frank and Tom McClary finally dropped on Fremont Street. Billy Clanton died where he stood. So this is what it actually was. So it wasn't the gunfight at the OK Corral, it was the gunfight on Fremont Street in the vacant lot next to the OK Corral. Hope you found that interesting. So I found this photograph online and it might help clear it up a little bit. You can see in the middle of the shot there, Fly's photographic studio, and you can see it's on Fremont Street, and you can see the gun battle actually taking place in that vacant lot between Fly's and the building on the corner. It's a little bit untruthful to the top left because they haven't allowed enough space for the City Hall, which stands in that place now, and I think was built in 1882, so it wasn't there on the day. But this gives you a vague idea. Okay, Sophisticates, this is Scheiffelin Hall in Tombstone. It was opened June the 8th, 1881, and when it was open, it was claimed to be the finest theatre between El Paso in Texas, San Francisco in California. And my suspicion is that in the Tombstone movie, when you see the Earps and their wives all enjoying the shows, it wasn't in the birdcage at all, it was in here. This was opened beforehand. It's a much bigger stage. They did operatic performances. It was a really classy place. It could seat 500 people. Let's face it, the birdcage was a gambling den and a whorehouse. It just happened to have a small stage. So I reckon that it actually took place in here, the theatrical performances that were portrayed in the Tombstone movie. Well, there are varying opinions on that. Who's to know which is right, but that is my suspicion. Anyway. Okay, we're walking back now on 3rd towards Allen Street. This used to be some kind of livery stable back in the day, where it says the Emporium. I'm not actually sure what really stood on that site, and it's never been developed since. Now this here is called the Four Deuces Saloon, and from this point on down that way for quite a few blocks is what's known as Hop Town. This used to be the old Chinatown. There were about 500 registered Chinese people living in Tombstone in those days, and they kept themselves to themselves. And the Four Deuces claim to fame was this was owned by a lady whose name I've forgotten, but this building used to be on Fremont Street, right opposite the OK Corral. So the lady that owned it, she was actually looking out the window and she witnessed the whole thing. So this building witnessed the whole thing. So they up to moved it at some point. It's one of my extended walks, hikes, all the way down that road for about 3 miles up to the Scheiffelin Monument. This is another historic building here. This building is in its original place, and this used to be the home of China Mary. She ran Chinatown. She got a slice of the action of everyone, every business transaction, every Chinese person's wages had to go via her, and she got a cut. She died a very, very wealthy woman. Underneath that house was a cellar where they had an opium den, and in the alleyway behind, that's where all the Chinese prostitution took place. And over on this side, Hot Town as well. Don't take any notice of OK Cafe, that's not historic, that wasn't there. This was on Chinatown. And that is my rig, that's where I live. Okay, hope you've enjoyed this little tour of Tombstone. Hope it's given you a little bit of the history.